The Arizona Territory stretched endlessly under the scorching October sun, its red earth cracked and thirsting for rain that hadn't come in 3 months. Sam Crawford wiped the sweat from his weathered brow as he guided his tired horse through the dusty streets of Copper Creek, a settlement that barely deserved the name town. At 42, Sam carried the weight of 15 years of ranching on his shoulders, his calloused hands telling the story of countless dawn-to-dusk days spent fighting the unforgiving land. His small ranch, the Broken Arrow, sat 20 miles south of town, a modest spread with maybe 200 head of cattle, when the drought hadn't claimed them. Sam had built it from nothing after the Spanish-American War, using his army pension and pure stubborn determination. But success had come at a price. The isolation had carved deep lines around his gray eyes, and his only regular conversation was with his aging cattle dog Moses. The saloon's batwing doors beckoned as Sam dismounted outside Miller's General Store. He needed supplies, coffee, beans, ammunition, but his pockets held only $7.34. Every penny counted when you were trying to keep a failing ranch afloat. The sound of raucous laughter and piano music drifted from the Golden Nugget Saloon, temporarily drowning out his worries. "Sam Crawford," called out Tom Miller, emerging from his store with a ledger in hand. "Haven't seen you in town for weeks. How's the ranch holding up?" Sam touched the brim of his worn hat. "Surviving, Tom. Just barely. Lost another 6 head to the drought last week. Can't afford to lose many more." Tom's expression grew serious. "I heard about the troubles. Listen, there's something happening over at the saloon you might want to see. Or maybe you'd rather not. Depends on your stomach for such things." "What kind of thing?" "Jake Morrison's got himself into some business that doesn't sit right with decent folks. But it's not my place to say more." Sam's curiosity piqued despite his exhaustion. Jake Morrison was a trader who dealt in everything from horses to whiskey to information, none of it entirely legal. Sam had always steered clear of the man's shadier enterprises, but Tom's troubled expression suggested something particularly disturbing. "I'll take a look," Sam said, securing his horse's reins. "But first, let me settle my account with you." Inside the dim saloon, the air hung thick with tobacco smoke and the sour smell of spilled whiskey. Sam's eyes adjusted slowly to the darkness, taking in the usual collection of drifters, cowboys, and local merchants. But the crowd had gathered around a corner table where Jake Morrison sat with a bottle of rot-gut whiskey and a satisfied smirk. Beside him sat a young Apache girl, maybe 15 or 16 years old, her dark eyes staring straight ahead with the hollow look of someone who had learned that fighting only brought more pain. Her traditional dress was torn and dirty, her long black hair matted and unkempt. Rope burns marked her thin wrists. "What's the highest bid so far?" Morrison called out to the crowd. "Come on, boys, she's young and strong. Work her hard for 10 years easy." Sam's stomach turned as he realized what he was witnessing. Despite the 13th Amendment, the practice of buying and selling people continued in remote territories where law enforcement was scarce and consciences were scarcer still. The girl would be sold into indentured servitude, a slavery by another name. $20, called out a grizzled prospector. 25, countered a ranch hand Sam recognized from the Double M spread. The girl's eyes remained fixed on some distant point, but Sam caught the slight tremor in her shoulders. She was terrified but had learned to hide it. Something in her dignified suffering reminded him of his younger sister Mary, who had died of consumption when Sam was barely 18. The same age as this girl, with the same dark hair and delicate features. $30. The voice belonged to Chuck Brennan, a man known for his cruelty to both animals and the Mexican workers he employed on his cattle ranch. Stories circulated about Brennan's household staff and what happened to young women who found themselves in his employ. The girl's composure cracked for just a moment, her eyes flashing with fear as she glanced at Brennan. Sam had heard enough stories about the man to know that $30 would buy this girl a lifetime of suffering. 40, Sam called out before he could stop himself. The saloon fell silent. All eyes turned to Sam, including the girl's. For the first time, she looked directly at him, searching his face with intelligent dark eyes that seemed older than her years. Morrison grinned. Well, Sam Crawford joins the bidding. $40 from the Broken Arrow. 50. Brennan's voice carried a dangerous edge. He didn't like being challenged, especially not by a small-time rancher. Sam's hand instinctively went to his pocket, feeling the meager contents. $7.34. He was about to bid money he didn't have, but something in the girl's eyes, a flicker of hope mixed with resignation, made the decision for him. 60. Sam called out, his voice steadier than he felt. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Brennan's face darkened, but he shook his head. Too rich for me, Crawford. Hope you know what you're getting into. Morrison banged his bottle on the table. Sold to Sam Crawford for $60. Pay up and she's yours. Sam's heart hammered as he approached the table. He had just committed to spending nearly 9 times what he actually possessed for a girl he didn't know, to save her from a fate he could barely imagine. As he looked down at her upturned face, he saw not just fear and uncertainty, but also a spark of intelligence and strength that the ordeal hadn't extinguished. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then spoke in accented but clear English. "Ayanna. It means eternal blossom in my language. I'm Sam Crawford. And Ayanna, that's a beautiful name for a beautiful girl who deserves better than this." For the first time since he'd entered the saloon, she smiled. It was just a slight upturn of her lips, but it transformed her entire face, revealing the lovely young woman beneath the dirt and despair. Now he just had to figure out how to pay for her freedom, and what to do with the 15-year-old Apache girl on a failing cattle ranch in the middle of nowhere. Sam led Ayanna out of the saloon into the blazing afternoon sun, acutely aware of the curious stares following them. His horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Red, stood patiently at the hitching post, but Sam's mind raced as he tried to solve his immediate problem. He had just bought a girl for $60, with only $7.34 to his name. "Mr. Crawford?" Ayanna's voice was soft but steady. "You cannot pay, can you?" Sam stopped walking and looked at her with surprise. Her English was better than most of the Mexican workers he'd employed over the years, and her observation was uncomfortably accurate. "What makes you say that?" "Your clothes. Your horse. The way you counted coins in your pocket before bidding." She glanced around the dusty street. "And you live alone on a small ranch. I heard the man in the store talking." Despite everything, Sam found himself smiling. "You're observant." "I had to be. It kept me alive." She paused, studying his face. "Why did you bid on me if you cannot pay?" The question hit him harder than he'd expected. Why had he? He thought of his sister Mary, of the stories about Chuck Brennan, of the hollow look in Ayanna's eyes that had transformed into something approaching hope. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "Though I'll admit I haven't figured out the details yet." Ayanna nodded as if this made perfect sense. "My grandmother always said the spirits guide those with good hearts to find a way." "Well, let's hope your grandmother was right about that." Sam took a deep breath. "First things first, we need to get you some food and clean clothes. Then I'll figure out how to pay Morrison." They walked toward Miller's General Store, but Sam's mind kept working. His ranch was mortgaged to the bank in Tucson, his cattle were dying from drought, and he had no family or close friends to turn to for help. The only thing of value he owned was his prize bull, Thunder, worth maybe $80 to the right buyer. "Tom," Sam called as they entered the store. "I need to ask a favor." Tom Miller looked up from his ledger, took in Ayanna's appearance, and his expression grew serious. "I heard what happened at the saloon. That was a good thing you did, Sam, but I can't pay for it," Sam finished. "I need to send a telegram to Bill Harrison in Phoenix. He's been after me to sell Thunder for months." Tom nodded slowly. Bill Harrison ran one of the largest cattle operations in the territory and had repeatedly offered to buy Sam's prized Hereford bull. It would break Sam's heart to sell Thunder. The bull represented his hopes for rebuilding his herd, but it was the only way to honor his commitment and save Ayanna. "I'll send the telegram," Tom said. "But Sam, you know selling Thunder means giving up on improving your breeding stock." "I know." Sam's voice was quiet but firm. "Some things are more important than cattle." While Tom composed the telegram, Sam gathered supplies for Ayanna. a simple dress, undergarments, boots, soap, and food. He also picked up extra supplies for the ranch, knowing that if Bill Harrison agreed to buy Thunder, he'd have enough money to get through the winter. "Mr. Crawford," Ayanna said quietly as they waited for Tom to return with news from the telegraph office. "In my culture, when someone saves another's life, that person becomes responsible for them. But also, the saved person becomes loyal to their savior unto death. I want you to know, I will not be a burden to you." Sam looked at this remarkable young woman who had endured more hardship in her 16 years than most people faced in a lifetime, yet still spoke of loyalty and gratitude. "Ayanna, you're not going to be anyone's property. Once I've paid Morrison, you'll be free to go wherever you want." She tilted her head, studying him with those intelligent dark eyes. "And if I want to stay and help you save your ranch?" Before Sam could answer, Tom returned with a telegram in his hand and a cautious smile. "Bill Harrison will pay $80 for Thunder, but he wants the bull delivered to Phoenix within the week." Sam felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Thunder had been the cornerstone of his plans to rebuild after the drought, but now the magnificent bull would buy Ayanna's freedom and keep the ranch running for another few months. "Tell him it's a deal," Sam said. As they prepared to leave town, Sam noticed the hostile stares from some of the other ranchers and townspeople. Taking in an Apache girl, even as an act of charity, was sure to cause talk. The Apache Wars had ended only 20 years earlier, and memories ran deep in this part of Arizona. "There's going to be trouble," Ayanna said quietly as they loaded supplies onto Red's back. "People will not understand why you helped me." "Let me worry about that," Sam replied. "Right now, I'm more concerned about getting you home safely and figuring out how to make this work." The 20-mile ride to the Broken Arrow Ranch passed in comfortable silence. Ayanna rode behind Sam on Red, her arms wrapped around his waist for balance. Despite her youth and recent ordeal, she observed everything: the terrain, the sparse vegetation, the distant mountains, with the keen eye of someone raised in this harsh landscape. As they crested the final hill before the ranch, Sam saw his modest spread laid out below. A simple adobe house with a covered porch, a barn that had seen better days, a few corrals, and a windmill that squeaked in the constant desert breeze. It wasn't much, but it represented 15 years of hard work and dreams. "It's beautiful," Ayanna said, and Sam could hear genuine appreciation in her voice. "It's home," Sam replied. "Or at least, it has been for me. I hope it can be a home for you, too, for as long as you want to stay." Moses, his aging cattle dog, bounded up to greet them, barking excitedly at the stranger, but quickly accepting Ayanna when she knelt down and spoke to him in both Apache and English. The dog's immediate acceptance seemed like a good omen. That evening, as they shared a simple meal of beans and cornbread on the porch, Sam watched Ayanna look out over the desert landscape. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, and for the first time since entering that saloon, she looked truly peaceful. "Tell me about your family," Sam said gently. Ayanna was quiet for a long moment. "My parents died when I was 12. Soldiers came to our camp during the night. I was visiting my aunt in another village, so I survived. After that, I lived with different relatives, but life became harder. Food was scarce. Some of the men in my tribe began trading with whiskey merchants. When I refused to marry a man 3 times my age, my uncle sold me to pay his debts." Sam felt anger rising in his chest, not Ayanna's uncle, who had probably been desperate, but at the entire system that had made such desperation necessary. "I'm sorry," he said. "No one should have to go through that." "My grandmother used to say that every ending is also a beginning," Ayanna replied. "Perhaps this is my new beginning." As they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the clear desert sky, Sam reflected on how much his life had changed in a single day. This morning he had been a lonely rancher, facing financial ruin. Tonight he was responsible for a remarkable young woman who had already begun to feel like family. Tomorrow he would have to drive Thunder to Phoenix, but tonight, for the first time in years, the Broken Arrow Ranch didn't feel empty. The journey to Phoenix took 3 days, with Sam driving Thunder in a makeshift trailer behind his wagon, while Ayanna handled the household chores and tended to the remaining cattle. When Sam returned with $80, enough to pay Morrison and keep the ranch running through winter, he found the place transformed. The house was cleaner than it had been in years. The vegetable garden had been weeded and watered with precious well water, and Ayanna had somehow managed to repair the loose boards on the barn using scrap wood and determination. More importantly, she had spent time with the cattle, and Sam could see that several of the weaker animals looked healthier. "How did you do all this?" Sam asked, genuinely amazed. Ayanna looked up from where she was grinding corn for tortillas, a skill she'd learned from Mexican traders. Apache women are taught to make the best of whatever resources they have. "Your ranch has good bones, Mr. Crawford. It just needed attention. Call me Sam, please. And thank you for all of this." Over the following weeks, they fell into a comfortable routine. Sam handled the heavy ranch work, repairing fences, managing the cattle, maintaining equipment, while Ayanna took charge of the household and garden. Her knowledge of desert plants proved invaluable. She knew which cacti produced edible fruit, which herbs could treat sick cattle, and how to conserve water during the ongoing drought. But it was her way with the animals that truly impressed Sam. The cattle, who had always been skittish and difficult to manage, seemed to calm in her presence. She had a particular gift with horses, and even Red, who typically tolerated only Sam, began following her around like a loyal dog. "My father was a horse trainer for the cavalry," she explained one evening as they watched the sunset. "Before the wars, before everything changed, he taught me that animals respond to respect and consistency, not fear." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. Sam instinctively reached for his rifle as 3 riders emerged from the gathering dusk. He recognized them immediately: Chuck Brennan and 2 of his ranch hands, Pete and Carlos. "Evening, Crawford," Brennan called out, his voice carrying a false friendliness that didn't extend to his cold eyes. "Heard you've been harboring an Apache girl out here." "I've given shelter to someone who needed it," Sam replied carefully, keeping his rifle visible but not directly threatening. "Is that a problem for you, Chuck?" Brennan dismounted, his hands resting casually on his gun belt. "Might be. Some folks in town are concerned about having Apache so close to their properties. Bad memories, you understand." "The Apache wars ended 20 years ago," Sam said. "Ayanna's just a girl trying to make a new life." "Apache don't change their nature," Pete interjected, spitting tobacco juice into the dust. "Once a savage, always a savage." Sam felt Ayanna tense beside him, but she remained silent. Her composure in the face of such hostility impressed him even as it broke his heart. "I think you gentlemen should leave," Sam said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "Now," Brennan held up his hands in mock surrender. "Easy, Crawford. We're just being neighborly. But if that girl causes any trouble, steals cattle, burns down barns, scalps any white folks, well, let's just say the community won't be understanding." After they rode away, Sam found Ayanna sitting on the porch steps, staring out at the desert. Her shoulders were rigid with suppressed emotion. "I'm sorry about that," Sam said, settling beside her. "Not everyone is like them." "Yes, they are," Ayanna replied quietly. "Maybe not as cruel, but they see Apache and think of war parties and burned settlements. They don't see a girl who can heal their cattle or save their crops. Their ignorance doesn't define who you are." She turned to look at him, her dark eyes reflecting the starlight. "But defines how I'll be treated everywhere I go. You know this. So why did you bring me here? Why risk your reputation, your business relationships, your safety?" Sam was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. "When I was 7 years old, my family was traveling through Kansas when our wagon broke down near a Cherokee settlement. We were out of food, and my little sister Mary was sick with fever. The Cherokee could have ignored us. White settlers weren't exactly welcome in their territory, but instead they took us in, nursed Mary back to health, and helped my father repair our wagon." He paused, remembering. The Cherokee woman who cared for Mary had eyes like yours, intelligent, kind, but guarded. She'd lost her own children to disease brought by white settlers, but she still had compassion for a sick white child. I never forgot that lesson about the capacity for goodness in people, regardless of race or past grievances. Ayanna listened intently, What happened to Mary? She died of consumption when she was 16. Same age as you. Sam's voice grew soft. I suppose when I saw you in that saloon, I saw another chance to do what the Cherokee woman did for us, to show kindness across the divide that separates people. And I remind you of her. In some ways, yes. But you're also yourself, strong, intelligent, capable. Mary never had the chance to become the woman she might have been. You do. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the desert, coyotes calling in the distance, the rustle of small animals in the brush, the creak of the windmill in the constant breeze. Sam, Ayanna said finally, I want to learn to read and write better. My English is good, but I want to understand legal documents, newspapers, books. If I'm going to make a life in this world, I need those skills. I can teach you, Sam offered. I've got some books in the house, not many, but enough to start with. And I want to learn about ranching, really learn, not just the women's work. I want to understand business, breeding, land management. If I'm going to help save this ranch, I need to know everything you know. Sam smiled. That's a tall order, but I'm willing if you are. Though I have to warn you, ranching is hard work, and there's no guarantee we'll succeed. The drought might break, or it might not. The bank might foreclose, or cattle prices might drop. There are no sure things in this business. There are no sure things in life, Ayanna replied. But there's satisfaction in building something worthwhile, even if it's difficult. As they headed inside for the night, Sam reflected on how much had changed since that day in the saloon. He'd bought Ayanna's freedom, thinking he was saving her, but increasingly it felt like she was saving him, from loneliness, from despair, from the gradual surrender of hope that had been creeping over him, like the desert drought. Tomorrow they would begin her education in earnest, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time in years, Sam looked forward to tomorrow. 6 months later, the Broken Arrow Ranch was unrecognizable. The spring rains had finally come, bringing life back to the parched landscape, but it was more than weather that had transformed the place. Under Ayanna's careful management, the vegetable garden produced enough food to feed them through winter, with surplus to sell in town. She had mastered Sam's accounting books and identified several ways to reduce expenses and increase efficiency. Most impressively, she had developed a system for treating sick cattle using traditional Apache herbal remedies, combined with modern veterinary techniques Sam had learned in the Army. Look at this, Sam said, reviewing the books one evening in March. We're actually showing a profit for the first time in 3 years. Ayanna looked up from the letter she was writing. Her penmanship had improved dramatically over the winter months. It's not just the money, Sam. Look outside. Sam followed her gaze to the front yard, where Moses was playing with 2 puppies they'd acquired from a litter in town. The corrals held healthy cattle. The barn stood straight and strong after extensive repairs, and the house itself gleamed with fresh paint and careful maintenance. It looks like a real home, he said. It is a real home, she replied. For both of us. Their peaceful evening was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses, not the threatening thunder of Brennan's visits, but the measured pace of official business. Sam recognized Sheriff Henderson's gray stallion even before the lawman came into view. "Evening, Sam, Miss Ayanna," Henderson called out as he dismounted. "Mind if I come up and sit for a spell?" "Of course, Sheriff. Coffee. Much obliged." As Ayanna served coffee and fresh biscuits, Henderson looked around the ranch with obvious approval. "Place looks good, Sam. Heard you've been doing well this year." "Can't complain. What brings you out this way?" Henderson's expression grew serious. "Got some news from Phoenix. Chuck Brennan's been charged with assault and holding workers in debt slavery. Turns out those stories about his household staff were true. Federal marshals raided his place last week." Sam felt Ayanna's tension beside him. Brennan had made several more threatening visits over the winter, always stopping just short of actual violence, but making his hostility clear. "What's that mean for us?" Sam asked. "Means you don't have to worry about Brennan anymore. But there's something else." Henderson pulled out an official-looking document. "Territorial government's been reviewing cases of illegal indenture and slavery. They want to make sure Miss Ayanna here is truly free, No outstanding debts or claims against her. Sam's blood ran cold. Morrison had no legal right to sell her in the first place. That's what makes this interesting, Henderson continued. Federal authorities are declaring all such transactions null and void. Which means, Miss Ayanna, you were never legally owned by anyone. You've been free all along. Ayanna was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. What about the money Sam paid? Morrison's going to prison, and his assets are being seized to compensate his victims. You'll both be receiving compensation, probably more than the $60 Sam paid. After Henderson left, Sam and Ayanna sat on the porch in comfortable silence. The news should have been cause for celebration, but Sam found himself feeling strangely melancholy. If Ayanna had always been legally free, she could leave any time she wanted. She had no obligation to stay at the Broken Arrow. "You're worried I'll leave," she said, reading his thoughts with the intuition that had developed between them over months of shared work and conversation. "The thought crossed my mind," Sam admitted. "You're a free woman with money coming to you. You could go anywhere, do anything." "I could," she agreed. "I could go to California, or back to the reservation, or even to one of the big cities back east. I've thought about all of those possibilities." Sam's heart sank, but he forced himself to remain calm. "And what did you decide?" Ayanna stood up and walked to the porch railing, looking out over the ranch they had built together. "I decided that freedom isn't about how many choices you have. It's about choosing to be where you belong." She turned back to face him, her dark eyes bright with unshed tears. "This is where I belong, Sam. With you, on this land, building something meaningful together. If you'll have me." Sam stood and joined her at the railing. "Are you sure? Ranch life is hard, and there will always be people who don't accept our arrangement." "Our arrangement?" Ayanna laughed, and the sound was like music in the desert air. "Is that what we're calling it? Because I thought we were calling it family." The word hit Sam like a physical blow. Family. Yes, that's exactly what they had become. Not father and daughter, not employer and employee, but something deeper and more complex. They were partners in every sense that mattered, bound together by shared struggles and mutual respect. "Family," he repeated, trying out the word. "I like the sound of that." "Then it's settled," Ayanna said. "We're family, and this is our home." As summer approached, their success became impossible to ignore. Other ranchers began seeking Ayanna's advice on treating sick cattle. Mexican families traveling through the area often stopped at the Broken Arrow, knowing they would find food, water, and hospitality regardless of their ability to pay. The ranch became a beacon of tolerance and cooperation in a region still scarred by racial tensions. One evening in late June, exactly 1 year after Sam had first seen Ayanna in that saloon, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the desert sky in brilliant colors. The cattle were healthy, the books showed a substantial profit, and plans were underway to expand their operation. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd walked away that day?" Ayanna asked. Sam considered the question seriously. "I probably would have lost the ranch within 6 months. Died alone and forgotten. Just another failed rancher who couldn't adapt to changing times." "And I would have." She didn't finish the sentence, but they both knew what fate had awaited her. "Instead, look what we built," Sam said, gesturing toward the thriving ranch. "Together." Ayanna reached over and took his weathered hand in her smooth young one. "My grandmother always said that some meetings are written in the stars long before they happen on Earth. Maybe we were meant to find each other." "Maybe we were," Sam agreed. "But even if it was destiny, we still had to choose to make it work. Every day, we had to choose to trust each other, to work together, to build something bigger than either of us could create alone." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Sam reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, he had been a lonely, failing rancher who had made an impulsive decision to save a young Apache girl from a terrible fate. Tonight, he was part of a family, unconventional perhaps, but bound by love, respect, and shared purpose. The Broken Arrow Ranch was no longer just surviving, it was thriving. and at its heart was a partnership between two people who had found in each other what they had been missing all along. Someone to belong to, someone who understood the true meaning of home. "Sam," Ayana said softly, "thank you for giving me more than just freedom. Thank you for giving me a future. Thank you for giving me a reason to believe in tomorrow," he replied. Together, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one over the desert they had learned to call home. The wind carried the scent of sage and the distant sound of cattle settling for the night, and for the first time in either of their lives, everything felt exactly as it should be. In the distance, a coyote called to its mate, and somewhere in the darkness, another answered. The sound reminded them both that the desert, for all its harshness, was also a place where those who belonged together could find each other against all odds. The Broken Arrow Ranch stood as proof that sometimes the best families are the ones we choose, and that home is not a place, but a feeling. The feeling of being understood, accepted, and loved exactly as you are. If you made it this far, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss our upcoming stories. Let us know in the comments what part of the world you're watching from. Your support motivates us to keep creating content like this. Thanks for joining us.